Doctor, months after this subsidy was approved by the president, there are still some hospitals that have not started implementing the reduced cost. Now, are there plans in place to monitor and ensure compliance with this presidential directive? Then the other one is it possible also to bring in the private sector to fund this? Now, this is the government now, bring in the private sector, because people are also talking about kidney transplant, so that the scope of care will be expanded to involve the private sector and all that.
So my expectation, of course, I don't work within government. I'm more of a private sector person now. Of course, I served government in the past. My expectation is that when you have a policy direction, you must develop an implementation arrangement and a mechanism for monitoring and implementation. If you look at the leadership of the sector today, Professor Pate has been in the development sector, and Dr. Salako are people who have the capabilities, to actually design a system that is enduring and sustainable. And I expect that maybe the last few months was actually used in designing and ensuring that once this starts, there will be a monetary framework that looks at performance and productivity. Remember, the first thing I said that this is innovative in itself. It is one thing to throw money at a problem. Because Nigeria will love throwing money at a problem, but the money don't get to solve the problems. Exactly. Okay, so my expectation is that the Federal Ministry of Health and their partner centers will have an implementation arrangement where those who have truly undertaken dialysis will be confirmed. For instance, I lead an organization that does independent verification of investment by the World Bank in Nigeria, Malia project. Okay, and it is our report of validation of outputs that define how the NSAs are paid. So my expectation is that there'll be a mechanism where there'll be an independent verification of services provided before further subsidies are given. Okay, so that answers your first question. The second thing you're asking is the involvement of private sector. Of course, see, if you look at the national health account in Nigeria, an average Nigerian spends roughly about 70%. I pay for about 70% of SRVs out of pocket. Okay, and per capita investment in health is just about $100 in Nigeria. Of course, it's very low when you compare to other countries. If you compare to South Africa, that's about $500 per capita, right? But even at that, 70% of that income comes from the pocket of Nigerians. And Nigerians where disposable income had reduced from about $460 in 2015 to about $200 in 2024. Right? And so when you get to a point where people need to pay out of pocket, you must also, because 12,000 out of pocket, out of the 50,000 that is subsidized, is still significant payment. Yeah. Okay? And people must be given the choices of where they access services, because this is also part of public trust. And medical information and data analysis in Nigeria has shown that in some part of Nigeria, private sector provides as high as 60% of healthcare services that is being provided within those areas. And so how do you expect 60% of population to access service if you don't involve the private sector? So my expectation is that this is the first phase of engagement. Of course, I am told that many more tertiary institutions will be enrolled. And I hope that in the next phase, so-called private facilities, because there are several private rental assets, and these assets must also be energized through this subsidy scheme.
All right. You spoke about the country being reactive rather than responsive in responding to challenges or problems. Kidney disease is rising due to fake drugs, contaminated food, and synthetic products.
And lifestyle.
And lifestyle as well. Shouldn't we also consider strategies to addressing these root causes rather than just always looking for solutions to them?
So there's what we call epidemiological transition. And when you are transitioning epidemiologically, which is due to, of course, development, the more civilized a country becomes, the more we transit from the infectious diseases to what we call the transition diseases, or what we call the chronic ailment, hypertension, diabetes. And once there are high incidence of hypertension, diabetes, due to our lifestyle changes, of course, renal cases will also be a natural consequence of high blood pressure and diabetes. Okay? So it is unavoidable to some extent because we eat more sugary things, we eat more salty food, we have deviated from the natural food system, we eat more thin food because you wake up very early in the morning, you have to come to TVC, you have to take something very snappy, the snacks that we do, these are cholesterol, sugar, salt, and of course they lead to metabolic condition. Metabolic condition leads to renal complication. So yes, of course, like you have said, there's a role for the kind of health services that I provide. I'm a preventive health specialist, okay, to educate people, to make sure that people take less of a risky, behavior, reduce alcohol intake, less of sugar, do exercise, and eat more natural food. Okay, so these are things that must go on, at the same time. But you won't focus on that alone. I mean, the problem is with you. You've got to resolve it.